Thank you, Atty. Lalanto, for the wonderful progress of the compensation board. So, let me now call on Attorney Macabangkit Lanto again. He is the former ambassador and former representative in Lanao.
Thank you, Panyero. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Pleasant good morning, excellencies, guests present today and those who are in their homes watching through virtual or Zoom thing. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm overwhelmed by the data. Congratulations by the quality of audience that we have today. I thought all along that I'd be speaking before students or at most lost students from the institution where I came from, UP. Only to note this morning that we have plenty of diplomats around. We are very thankful for your presence, Your Excellencies, because we know that efforts for rehabilitating Marawi would be successful if you will help us in the level. This issue is very close to me, close to my heart, because I am a victim of these things. My house was burned, bombed, and some of the commercial houses of my wife was also razed to the ground. And that is why I have spent the most part. I'm basically a journalist. I have my bi-weekly column in the Daily Figure. But before I was with Daily Inquirer. Most of my articles are about Marawi. I have exhausted so many articles about Marawi, bringing to our people's consciousness and to the world about what is happening. What was happening in Marawi at the time? In fact, as mentioned by Amina, tomorrow we reach the 6th year of the siege of Marawi, the worst devastation ever suffered by any Filipino in the hands of a brother Filipino. Yeah. So I hope we have conveyed this message, and later on we will try to answer whatever questions that will be raised. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Atty. Lanto, for constantly raising awareness about the plight of our kababayans ng Sabah and for the rehabilitation efforts. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Chargé d'Affaires of the Philippine Embassy as well. Good morning. Now we have Dr. Stephen Muncy, the Executive Director of Community and Family Service International.
I'm very privileged to be with you today, and I thank you for the invitation. I first went to Marawi in the all-out war of 2000 and have been going to Marawi a lot since the siege of 2017. Our office organized, we established an office in Marawi in 2008, and we were, thank you, responding to the siege, day 3 of the siege. Just to put some numbers to the displacement, in 2017, the numbers ran between 350,000 to 400,000 persons. And I think numbers are important because they give us a sense of the people behind the situation. And most of those people displaced within 48 hours from Marawi and the nearby towns like Lanto. Local actors saved many lives, but we know many people died, and since tomorrow is the start of the anniversary, we call it an anniversary of the siege, I'd like to propose we just pause for those whose lives were lost. Thank you. 70% of those displaced moved to relatives or friends or other homes that they had in other locations. And for ease of distinguishing the population, we call them home-based. 30% found it impossible to live with relatives owing to the financial or other constraints of those families. So they ended up in evacuation centers. The emergency response began immediately, as many of you know, and involved both local and international actors. Recovery plans were crafted during the siege, which is a good thing because people were thinking about the future. But it also meant that some of the plans were developed without a lot of consultation with the affected population. The task force took the lead in Marawi City, and subsequently the Bar government, which was newly formed, got involved in helping people affected by the siege. There were some early challenges. First of all, there were unexploded ordnance in the area. There were major security issues. The population that was displaced wanted to go back to find if there were relatives who had passed away, remove their remains. They also wanted to get what they could from their homes for their future life. It made very good sense. A lot of pressure was put on the government officials, and they agreed to something called Campesita. It's an organized opportunity for people to go back into the most affected area, to their homes, and get what they could to honor the persons that they have lost. The reconstruction plan was developed in Manila. It was very top-down. I think good intentions. There was discussion about turning Marawi into a new Singapore. Very quickly, people said, we don't want to live in Singapore, we want to live in Marawi. So a lot of pressure came to make the plan a plan that the people could own. And that led to some consultations, but we used the language discussions because that seemed to be more in keeping with the nature of the intent of that exercise. It also became necessary to clarify who was displaced and who wasn't displaced. So it was agreed that there would be a process of, in effect, interviewing people and determining who was, in fact, a former resident of the most affected area. There were major and are major land ownership issues. You heard that addressed earlier. And there were, of course, COVID-19, which affected everybody, including those trying to bring about the rehabilitation of Marawi. And then the social justice issue, the demand for justice and compensation that goes with it. Again, I think the point made earlier, it's not just about the money, it's about justice. Where are we now? Through that process to determine who was from the most affected area, who was in fact displaced, agreement has been reached that there were 15,677 households, or roughly 78,355 persons. If you assume about 70% of them are home-based, meaning living with relatives or have other means of accommodation, that leaves about 30% who remain people without a place to go to. Much of the public infrastructure in the Maha has been completed, as you just saw, and it looks really good. I have to say, government has done what it committed to do, and they've done it well. There's still more to be done. There is an issue of water, there's an issue of power, but government has delivered most of what it committed to do. And I'm in civil society, we're not supposed to support government, right? They've done it, and it looks good. So I say with all sincerity, there has been much progress, and there's much promise in the most affected area. There's opportunity there, particularly for the young people. There's opportunity to do more in life, to have more experiences in life, more than you've had in the past. However, the missing element is the people, because we have all these wonderful public buildings which are necessary, roads, etc. But we don't have people living in houses. We have houses that were badly damaged by the siege. in theory, should be demolished and the debris removed. But people who own those buildings don't want them to move, don't want them to disappear, in part because they have value to them, sentimental and psychological value. But also, if they are removed, there's no evidence that I own that land. There's no evidence that this was my home. So they've elected for those buildings to remain. It doesn't mean they can move in, but those buildings remain, and they're important for the psychological well-being. They're important also for legal purposes. About 3,000 persons have applied for permits to rebuild their homes in Marawi. About half of those applications have been approved. The rest are being processed. But those applications come largely from the home base. People like Ambassador Lanto, I don't know if you've applied, but they are people who own something in Marawi. My bias is for people who don't own anything. My bias is for the poor, the disadvantaged, the people who are the renters, or the sharers, or the informal dwellers, the people who make a city a vibrant, wonderful place to live. They are not there. The task force is making good progress, and we have worked closely with them since 2018, day in and day out. They have our respect, they've done good work. They've committed 2,500 homes, and they've built about half of them, and that half is now occupied. They're continuing to build the others. UN Habitat built 1,000 homes. Those homes are occupied. But in both cases, these homes are outside the Ma'a, the most affected area. In fact, they're a little bit some distance from the Ma'a. So what that means for many people is to go from their home, and it is a permanent home, to the city, center of the city, requires you to go by tricycle, and the fee is generally 150 pesos one way. You do that twice, it's 300 pesos. If you're earning minimum wage, you might be able to pay the transport fee. But if you're not earning minimum wage, if you're displaced and your existence is based on livelihood assistance provided by the government or NGOs, you're going to find it very difficult. And more so for persons who have disabilities, nursing mothers, senior citizens, those like myself, those who need to go to a city center where there are health services, social services. You may or may not know that in the Philippines, if you qualify as a senior citizen or a person with a disability, you're entitled to a pension of 500 pesos a month. It usually comes to you every quarter. But obviously, if your transport fee is 150 one way, 150 back, that's 300 pesos, and you might want to eat lunch when you make that trip. The money's small. That 500 pesos is gone. What are our recommendations? And I say this as someone who loves this country. I've been here 42 years. I say it with respect to the government and all the many actors, both local and international, who have contributed to Marawi. I share these recommendations with you. They come from my own colleagues, but more importantly, they come from the people we've talked to. And let me first speak about one of the people we've talked to. Her name is Faha. She's given me permission to speak of her. She's 65 years old. She's a single mother. She has 7 dependents. She's a school teacher. She lived in Caloocan area of Marawi. It was destroyed. She fled to a neighboring municipality. She stayed 10 days with her relatives, but they didn't have a lot of money, and she decided she needed to move her family to Iligan, a nearby city. They lived in an evacuation center for 6 months until Iligan said it's time for you to go elsewhere. So then she went to one of the first evacuation centers open near Marawi. 2 minutes, thank you. And she stayed there until 2019, when she and her 7 dependents moved into one of the transitory sites. She's a wonderful woman. She's very outspoken. She's very humorous. Those 2 reasons I love her: outspoken and humorous. They come together. And she never hesitates to say, this is what I'm grateful for. This is what I've been able to achieve. This is what my family is doing. But this is what we need. And what we need is permanent shelter. So she is waiting for that. I hope she gets it. But I can tell you, every time I've seen her, she's been very clear. This is what we've done. This is what we're doing. This is what we need. Please help us move forward. So, in the spirit of Faha, let me share these recommendations. Number 1, we need to encourage the establishment, expansion, and scaling up of training, skills training and livelihood assistance program by relevant government agencies and NGOs. And Faha and her children are one example. Her son has just graduated from MSU, a degree in criminology. He will need work. It's great to have a degree, but if you don't have a job, it doesn't do much for you. Other people have not been able to be in school owing to the financial constraints associated with displacement. They need an opportunity to get some education, particularly skills training, so they can get a job. As the first slide of my presentation said, much has been done and there is much promise, but much more needs to be done. For our international guests, this is not the time to say we draw back. This is the time to give more. It's a marathon, we're not at the end, it's time to do more. Second, that they need to complete the ongoing construction of the permanent homes, as I mentioned, but there needs to be an effort to establish a school bus and a transportation hub. Otherwise, the beautiful school buildings that are about to be open will be empty because the young people who need to get to the schools can't pay the transport fee or can't find a tricycle or jeepney to take with them. Number three, you need to facilitate the construction of homes in the Maha by those who have resources. If you have money and you have a home there and you can build it, the government should make it easy for that to happen. If you don't have money and the compensation board can help you because you're an owner, the government should make that easy. But again, there will be many people who cannot build because they don't have the money, they didn't own, they were a renter, a sharer, or an informal dweller. Number four, increase the resources for the Land Dispute Resolution Committee, which will allow for expanded efforts in ideally more land. Going quickly, that's my time is up. Fine. Consider encouraging the private sector to enter into land banking arrangements, not for the profit of the corporate economy, but for socialized and low-cost housing in the Maha. Number six, provide information and education proactively, as well as psychosocial support for those many people who are relying heavily on possibly unreasonable expectations of the Marawi Compensation Board. The board's doing great work, they will do great work. Not everyone will benefit and not anyone will get as much money as they think they should get. Number seven, factor some of the lessons learned from the Marawi situation into ongoing efforts to pass an IDP bill in Congress. Congressman, thank you for putting a bill forward, and also for the IDP bill in the Box Form Parliament. Lastly, and apologies for going a little over time, strengthen and adequately finance the Human Rights Commission at the national and the farm level to better ensure the protection of rights of internally displaced persons, which includes the right to have a say in plans made for their future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Steve Muncy. Truly, there's much work to be done, but we're happy with the progress so far. And for our last panelist, maybe please call on Congressman Zia-Ur Rahman, Adiong, representative of the 1st District of the Lanto, sir.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, peace and blessings be upon him. As Prophet of God, seal the messengers, Muhammad the son of Abdullah, who God chose to be the bearer of this message and the sign of mercy unto mankind. Peace and blessings be upon him, progeny of the Prophet, peace be fortune to the values. Piangset allow me first to recognize the members of the international forum present, my fellow panelists who are also present, my uncle and fellow IDP, by the way, Ambassador Macabangkit, Lanto, Dr. Stephen Muncy, thank you very much for your continued effort, for working towards the Philippine Marawi, for personally going there to the area to talk with an IDPs. It's really appreciate all your efforts since the start of the siege and start of the rehabilitation. You've never left us. Thank you very much for that. And from the representative from the Marawi Compensation Board. Well, I think that tomorrow will be the first day of the signing ceremony of signing of the IRR. So you'll be traveling back to Marawi, I think it will be later today. Attorney Saliha and Lanto. Let me just say, let me just extend my greetings to every one of you. President, thank you very much, Kakadina, for inviting me. In fact, I just received, I think last week, Kakadina called me and she was very worried about the slow progress of Marawi. I think Dr. Muncy already presented to you how Marawi rehabilitation has been going on. And many of our fellow IDPs felt that there's some sort of a delay in the rehabilitation. And in fact, the actual payment for the actual compensation package. And so Kakadina called me out last week and she told me, hey, we need to remember it again, the traffic issue of Marawi, because it's been 6 years now. And we feel that this current administration has no clear position on whether to continue on with the task force bound Marawi, the rehabilitation, or whether they need to reprogram again the policy of the previous administration insofar as we build in Marawi. But let me just share to you, I think Uncle Banky, very personal and casual person, so I just told him Uncle Banky. Sharing his personal, what transpired during 6 years ago. And up to now, many of the people, of the residents, in fact, of the most affected area, these are 24 barangays, villages, which has about more than, they say it's half of Marawi, but I would say it's, I think it's more than half of Marawi. The residents of Marawi City have continuously lingering in areas in neighboring cities like Iligan City. I myself am fortunate, I'm part of the number. In fact, I have the fact number. These are the identification cards for IDPs who unfortunately left their homes because of calamities. In our case, it's about the calamities. So many of them are living in Metro Manila. And again, in some of them who are much fortunate, they're living in Cagayan. And so I have a prepared speech here, but I don't want to bore you with a typical politician speech. I would be rather join you and respond to your questions later on. But let me just share to you now, because I believe each of us, each of the panelists, represent a certain sector. And I come from the House of Professionals. Let me just update you on what is being done now by this current leadership under the House. Don't mind the rumor that there's a stabilization plan that was leadership, but we will not focus on that first. We'll focus on how now the House of Representatives has been dealing with the rehabilitation of Marawi. As I've said, at first when I got elected in 2019, there was no clear policy of this administration whether they going to pursue the rehabilitation or not. I've heard that there's going to be a plan to altogether abolish the task force bound in Marawi and perhaps come up with another plan. I was told by one of the legal advisors of this current administration from Malacanang, and I was asked whether task force bound in Marawi still has relevance in rebuilding Marawi. And they want again to form another group or another some sort of an interagency task force, but they will have to realign some of the budgets so that it will be more speedy in terms of rehabilitation. Because we were promised that by the end of the term of President Duterte, Marawi City will be completely rehabilitated. But we're not talking about damaged properties here. We're not talking only of the private properties or the public assets that have been destroyed. We're talking about lives of people. For some of you, this may appear numbers, just simple numbers. But for us, these are lives, human lives. The loss of economic opportunities cannot be determined. There's no measurement that would measure the everyday loss, potential loss of those businessmen, of those government employees who have been cut off completely from the opportunity, the potential opportunity, had siege never happened. So these are the things that it's hard for the government to really quantify or even qualify. And so we're talking about destroyed lives, which is the most difficult for us to address. The memories that have been lost from us forever. So I, as a representative of the first district of Lanao, which Marawi City constituency, I double time. I talked with, because this is a problem that we inherited from the previous administration. I lobbied for the creation of the Special Committee on Marawi Rehabilitation because I believe we need to have a counterpart in the House of Representatives. They have a special committee in the Senate. But the concentration of the work, because Senate has a national scope, and I believe as a IDP and as a legislator and as a representative of Marawi, it is in fact an insult not only on my political being but as to my person if I don't lobby for the creation of a special committee in Marawi. And thankfully for the leadership of the House has given us the special committee in Marawi. I would have wanted it to be a standing committee so that the budget would be continuously given to the committee, but it was made as a special committee, some sort of an ad hoc committee. So we are pushing for not only to continue the rehabilitation, the much needed budget for that, but to call on the people responsible for the delay of Marawi, because we cannot move forward without holding people into account. What causes the delay? They say it's a major part of the delays because of land dispute. But there's already a subcommittee on land dispute and resolution. So we want to look further away from not only from the rehabilitation, but to trace back a few steps in making sure what causes the delay. Whether MAA or the most affected area is heavily titled, because the problem of Marawi is still part under the proclamation of then President Quirino placing Marawi City as a military reservation. So you will have a problem of land ownership. We cannot even title our own lands because of this declaration. And President Duterte, though he said that we need to return back the land to the real owner, but it was subject into global. It was put under the program of the Department of Agrarian Reform. Our position, rather, is to directly give back the land and not subject it to a conditional government policy. If you don't turn the land into farmland, irrigable land, then you will no longer lose your ownership over that piece of land. So it has a condition set by the government. So it is not attached or not really emanate from our concept of the right to self-determination over our ancestral land. That's number one problem. You have land dispute there because there's several families who have been contested whether that land is owned by them or owned by other people. That's number one cause of delay. Number two cause of delay perhaps is the budget, because Task Force Bawang Marawi is an interagency task force. It is composed of many departments. It has no specific budget allocation. It has no specific budget allocation. Each department is given the task to pull in resources in order to finance a particular program declared by the task force now Marawi under the priority that must be financed first. If I were Secretary Lalanto, I have no authority to impose upon my colleague. Because if I were the Secretary of Rosario, he has no power to impose upon his co-cabinet member to pull in resources from your department was been allocated for administrative policy, administrative cost, and diverted to Marawi rehabilitation. That's really a problem. So I guess being a legislator and being coming from the community, we understand the dynamics on the ground. And from there, I think we need to make this current administration fulfill the job of that previous administration, not really putting blame on whoever is responsible for the delay. But we make Marawi rehabilitation not just an administrative policy or administrative priority, but a state policy. That's what we want to have. Is not just an administrative priority of a sitting administration, but a continuing state policy. And I'm really glad that as far as the compensation is going, we're moving towards that direction, but we need to move fast. Because 1 day in a rehabilitation center is too long for a single parent who's dependent, that's what the revolution said. We have so many, so many children and dependents. Been sent to school, all these problems. So I get there's so much work to be done, and we're very thankful that the international community is very much interested in looking into the problems and the challenges brought by the siege in 2017. By the way, let me just add that it's just right that the international community should focus on the rehabilitation of Marawi, because this is not a problem that has to be settled by the Philippine government alone. Remember, Marawi was those fighters who laid siege in Marawi brought in international ideology. This group is not part of the mainstream, the narrative of Philippine Barcelona revolutionary fronts. This is completely alien to us. It is an exported ideology coming from overseas. They pledged their allegiance to ISIL. They thought that maybe they could introduce a new one because they have already lost hope in the ongoing negotiation between these two parts. And these young people wanted to have another set of government. So it's an external ideology, exported ideology. It's not a homegrown or homeborn ideology. So I think that the international community also needs to look into Marawi City as a template in order to curtail the expanding global terrorist network. So if Marawi City rehabilitation will be successful, then that will also be a template for each countries who also may have been facing the same similar problem so far as terrorism is concerned. We would be a model to the international community how we move forward, how resilient we are as a people, and how we embrace peace over chaos and terrorism. So thank you very much for your invitation. Assalamualaikum.